I love looking for really obscure video games that no one else really talks about, the hidden gems that never made it mainstream. And some of the most fun to look at are the games that are tied into pre-existing media, because you never know what you're going to get with these. Some are just obvious cheap cash grabs that not much effort was given to, but some are hilarious and have more value to them. I like that you never know which kind you're going to get. Recently, I tried a rather interesting one. NCIS the video game. Now, NCIS may be one of the most watched television series in the United States, but I confess I have never seen an episode. I just don't watch much TV and don't share as much of the interest in crime, forensics, and Abby Shudo that some of my family members do. Still, I was interested to give it a try. A crime investigation show does seem like it should have a good starting premise for a video game, so even if I know nothing about the characters or anything else, I thought I'd see if NCIS managed to make a good game. Because even if I may not be qualified to review episodes of NCIS itself, I do think I'm qualified to review video games. Well, before we even talk about the gameplay, I must say I did immediately question the premise. NCIS are supposed to investigate crimes related to the Navy and Marines, but apparently in this universe they can have only the slightest connection to them in order to completely take over a case. A Marine is found murdered? Good premise, makes sense, they should investigate it. But an NCIS member happened to be one of the many people held hostage in a bank robbery? NCIS is taking over the entire case, baby! I'm no military expert, but that just seems wrong. But let's just ignore that for now. How did they convert the show into a game? Let's focus on that. Well, they kept things simple and laid the game out into episodes, which do take about an hour of playtime each. So it is just like an interactive episode of the show. And there are only 4 episodes, so you can finish the entire game in well under 5 hours. And even though it's very short, I like most of what they did with the plot in that small amount of time. The first 3 episodes seem completely unconnected and are pretty interesting in their own way, but then the 4th ties them all together and culminates in a very exciting ending. I thought that was a cool thing to do, making them all connected, although it doesn't seem that way at first. Although the end of the last episode has a bit more of a kick to it, each episode is rather formulaic, so they can feel a bit repetitive. And this is the formula I found. You usually end up investigating a bigger crime different than what you thought at the beginning, and some minor character introduced near the beginning turns out to be the real culprit. And that formula isn't the only thing that's repetitive, unfortunately, so let's finally get into the actual gameplay. There are only a few main things you do for gameplay in each episode. You usually start at the crime scene looking for clues and taking pictures of evidence. Then you analyze what you found by doing things like matching up images correctly to see what shoe left the footprint, or gathering fingerprints. You can also examine corpses to find the cause of death, and then you can hack into databases by doing short memory or search games, match up all that info to come up with more conclusions, and then you finally get to interrogate your main suspect. I'd say interrogating suspects was one of the worst parts, because it's just QuickTime events. And if you miss pressing the button in time, you just have to go through the whole thing again until you finally do press it in time. So there isn't really a point to it. Just those few short things I mentioned are seriously most of what you get to do, with some other simple things thrown in there occasionally, like opening locks or moving objects around a room. It's all very easy stuff. A kid could do it. The later episodes do make things like the chemical matching and memory games slightly harder, but it's barely any more difficult. So don't think that this game will be that great of an investigation experience. It's extremely basic and straightforward. The most difficult part is when you get to the deduction board and have to put each piece of evidence together to see what connects to what, and then you have to choose why they are connected. And this is mostly difficult only because my fast-paced brain tends to just choose the first choice I see that's right. But no, you have to choose the one that's most right. So even if my answer was technically correct, I could get it wrong according to the game. And we all know that's not fun. As you do each different kind of task, you play as different people for their own specializations within NCIS. The cast of characters was pretty interesting, even for someone like me who wasn't familiar with them before. You've got Gibbs, who's the boss of the group, Ducky, who examines the murder victims' bodies, McGee, who does the tech stuff, Tony and Ziva, who do more of the groundwork, and Abby, who does forensics. One thing with Abby is that she's into a fictional beverage called Calf Pow, which is, strangely enough, used as the lives in some minigames, where if you choose enough wrong answers, you'll have to start over. This was super confusing to an outsider like me who wondered why there was just some random drink in the corner, and then if I messed it up, it said, "No more Calf Pow." But I guess they probably just figured that if they needed a life system, which is honestly pointless in this game, they could have cut it out, that they better at least make it something that fans can look at and go, "Hey, that's my favorite fictional energy drink," but it's a little weird. At least the game isn't always hyper serious, so it's fine to make there be a weird little Calf Pow thing. There is this sense of humor that pops up here and there despite the game dealing with a lot of murder and terrorism. The main characters will have their little moments of banter with each other, and sometimes it's strange, but I did laugh at some lines. And this was made with the writers of the actual show, so I'm guessing that if you enjoy the humor and the real thing, it will carry over into this game. And some of the stories they wrote were rather interesting, for the actual plot, not just the banter. Though I'll admit I got bored by the time I reached the last one. But you've got casino robberies, bank robberies, murder, torture, terrorism. If you're into crime shows, this has some variety to keep you interested. But some of the most interesting parts of investigation, like examining the murder victims, was really underutilized and more time was given to just taking pictures of bullet holes in the wall. I'm sure they didn't have a huge budget for this game, and the janky animations might be a big sign of that, so they likely added just about as much gameplay as they could with those monetary restraints, but I really wish that they could have made it even more interactive, especially with the interrogations. It would have been nice to have choices of what questions to ask instead of QuickTime events, even if the right questions to choose were relatively obvious for the player. They could have added this idea into a lot of areas, actually. Like when you're investigating a crime scene and find something, the character will immediately say what it was likely from. But it could have been cool to require more critical thinking from the player and have them guess. Because as is, there's really no way to lose this game. If you run out of Calf Pow, you just start over from that exact same puzzle. It would be so much more exciting if there were more branching paths based on how well you do, where maybe you could get a bad ending to the episode if you perform poorly. But I guess they probably didn't want to make it possible for the heroes to fail. And I think that's where we see that an NCIS video game could be a good concept, but an NCIS TV show video game has a little too many constraints to make it as good as it could possibly be. Because I will say this game has the basis to be good. All of the different kinds of gameplay have the potential to be really fun, but they're all very dumbed down. So even if it's pretty good as far as the TV show-based video games I've played so far have gone, in that it's great at offering genuine good new content for fans, it's not good enough to stand on its own without that NCIS label. In that objective way, it's not a very good game. There's not really any replay value unless you just really like the show, because nothing is really skill-based and you already know how the plot of each episode goes. Because of that, it does kind of feel like merely a super fan collector's item sort of thing. Of course, it's not perfect for show fans because most of the characters are not voiced by their actual actors, but I think the voice actors did a convincing enough job that they know what they're doing for the characters. The character models and animations are a little more questionable, but they're still pretty recognizable to the real people. So, if you think the service to fans and the episode plots are enough to want to play it despite the weak gameplay, you'll have a few fun hours out of it, though nothing too gripping. For someone like me, I would probably be bored watching through an actual episode of NCIS, but making it interactive and probably more concise makes it more enjoyable. But will I play it again? No. The story wasn't that great, and the gameplay was nothing I need to do again. I don't regret playing it though. At the same time, I don't really recommend it. There's just not enough content to be worth it unless you're a big fan of the show, like I said, and you want these extra episodes. Or if you just need something new to waste your time on for a bit, it works for that. So in conclusion, with this very easy gameplay, NCIS really isn't great on its own as a video game. Although I think they could have made it a lot better. So give it a try if you want, but don't expect much. And while this was a bit of a flop despite some good moments, I'll definitely still be playing lots more games based on other random shows and movies in the future, looking for gems. Because everyone else might be off playing the latest big game like Hitman 3, but I'm here playing this kind of stuff. If I don't, who will? Someone has to make the development of this game worth it, even if it could have been developed a little better. And in the meantime, before I find another interesting video game to share with you all, I hope you all stay as groovy as ever. You can like the video if you had a good time, and also subscribe for more videos about video games. I really appreciate you watching.